A few years ago, I had a very special guest on. His name was Wayne Herschel, and I had found his work through a series of synchronistic events, of course. And he had written a fabulous book called The Hidden Records, and it resonated very much so with me. So I contacted Wayne and I asked him to come on, and while I was preparing for his show, I really looked into his research in depth, and I was quite impressed with the work that he was presenting, that he was coming out with at the time, that had to do with the alignment of many sacred sites with the Pleiades and the Taurus constellation, the bull. And I was rather captivated by his work, and as the further I looked into it, and the more I actually had visited many of the places that he talked about in the Hidden Records. And so I had experienced them firsthand, and I'm a big advocate for people to always go by what they experience, to really take the time to not just have a virtual experience of something or, in the mind or, online or things like that, but to really go and to experience these places, because there's really nothing like it. You really can't replace that. So I had met Wayne, not in person. He's in South Africa, joining us from South Africa tonight. That's where he's located, but I had been introduced to his work and I had been following it. And I had found myself in a couple sites, the pyramid sites down in Mexico, and I was in Stonehenge. I was in London that year. So I was traveling around the world quite a bit that year, and it was that was the particular year that I had found his work. So I was quite captivated by the alignments to the Pleiades, and, my work along that line is known for that. So basically, he has been a couple of years since he's been on, and his work has progressed, and he has evolved into his own, and he's done a tremendous amount of work pulling a lot of different subjects out of the air. But his story is unique in the sense that it started with him traveling to these sites also. And he was sort of self-initiated into a higher order of sorts, where he was able to kind of start to put things together, and he was synchronistically led to pieces of the puzzle. And he has quite a fascinating story. He's got 3 websites that you can check out while you're listening to tonight's show: thehiddenrecords.com, keyofsolomon.net, and oneism.org. And those are all listed right here on Achieve Radio's homepage. You can also go to his Facebook. He has quite a following on Facebook. I believe he has a fan page you can like. And so he's going to kind of catch us up, because, to be honest with you, he goes so fast, and I try to keep up with him on Facebook, but it's very hard to, because he's doing so much work out in the world, and he's got things going on all the time. So Wayne's going to join us tonight to catch us up on his theory and his work, and if there's a new book out in progress, and what's really caught his consciousness at this point in time. Welcome, Wayne.
Hi, Hillary. How are you doing?
Well, thanks so much for joining me here, all the way from South Africa in the middle of the night. We appreciate you coming on and giving us all these fabulous insights in the middle of your dream time.
It's 2 a.m. Yeah, that is true, but it's good to be here.
So why don't you catch us up? Is there anything that I left out in the introduction that you would like to share with people about yourself, about your work, and what you're doing right now? And why don't you fill us in?
Sure. You pretty much covered it. I think it's quite amazing that it's a snowball effect. I was quite happy that it was just a theory in the beginning, because I had about 15 star maps in the book that I published. And to date, we've got well over 30 different cases now to add to it. If this is real, it should be everywhere, and we're finding it everywhere. It's in the Christ story, it's in the Vatican records, it's in ancient churches and forgotten lands. It's in every foundation civilization pretty much in the world. So, yeah, it has grown in evidence, you could say.
Well, one of the things that really caught me about your work was not just the Pleiades and the Bull Taurus constellation connection, but what caught my attention with your work was that you were finding this particular star map in quite a bit, a lot of different sites, a lot of different well-known places. And so you seem to be taking the work of others and kind of stepping one step further, meaning you were really pulling in this theory that the ancients had left us. For those of you who have not read his book, he pulls in this kind of connection where all of these ancient sites have left us a very specific star map showing where our origins come from, that we come from the Pleiades. and that the Orion's belt and the Taurus constellation all point to this constellation in a way that is obvious in the pictures that he shows you. And there's a star there that, in particular, that these star maps point to, and it's consistent. And you really don't see it until you start to look at Wayne's star maps, and you start to align these different things and see the alignments here. And it really is quite fascinating. It opens you up very quickly to the reality of what he's talking about. Now, Wayne, I know we talked about this last time you were on the show, and people can still find that archive on my radio homepage right here on Achieve Radio. If you'd like to listen to that after the show, it kind of fills you in on some of that stuff. But have you continued to find this connection between the Pleiades and the bull and these symbols? Have you continued to find that in your work in new places?
In fact, every single one. There are some sort of lucid theories out there as well, trying to make it mean something else. But when they use the bull for the sacred place in the sky, and then areas around the areas like Göbekli Tepe, they're busy uncovering at the moment, so we can't really sort of jump to conclusions on that one. But if you look at just the general surroundings, the glyphs that are on the stones that have been lifted so far, they have sun worship symbols. They have a bull, which is typical for bull worshipping cults. They would call them, of course, they were cults because they were crazy off-track, let's call them beliefs, but they were revering the stars in the Taurus area. And the mountains near the Göbekli Tepe in Turkey site, they call the mountains the Taurus Mountains. So, all these sort of things start showing you the way. And people must get a bit annoyed when they hear the way we speak about stars pointing to something. I must make it very clear for people that this star map is using two main constellations that are around it, around a couple of sun-like stars in this little area in Taurus. They're using those constellations as reference points. That actually, you measure, for example, Orion's belt is 3 stars in a row that are very bright, easiest to see in the sky. Just align those 3 in a line and follow to the Taurus direction. And by traveling through 33 degrees of arc in astronomy, you land up right in that little spot where the proverbial X that marks the spot in the star map is located. But there are 2 others that are near it as well that are sun-like. So we have a little grouping, almost a perfect equilateral triangle of 3 that are sun-like, and they are shown in orientation around the Pleiades area. And the Pleiades as a group looks like a leg. It looks like a little paddle. The Egyptians seem to call it the leg of the bull. So, the old theory that this leg constellation of the bull in Egypt history was the Big Dipper. It just didn't make sense. And I don't know how the first Egyptian hieroglyph decipherings actually ended up like that. But, we're putting it all back into place. And this reason that historians insist that it was sun worship, I completely relook at that and say, yes, it was sun worship, but it was not our sun. It was another son of their proverbial gods, flesh and blood visitors, who I believe are our ancestors, because this is what they all seem to tie in. They're human-like people that came from the sky, and we seem to be in text references as their children, their follow-on of their lost empires, and they were all lost in a biblical flood event. So, it all kind of makes sense when you look at the whole picture, but take each little piece of the story around the world and see the most amazing things in it. It involves UFOs, because they had to get there somehow. And we're finding the Vimana of the Eastern Hindu tradition. In China, they have this flying hat. We found some very recent ones in some of the Chinese paintings of, it looks like a bowler hat with ribbons and flying in the air. And then if you compare it to the early Vatican records, they have the typical sort of, I call it a minister's hat. It's a very weird-looking holy man's hat. And this also had ribbons on it, and the hat is, again, flying, and it's actually built into all the, let's call them coat of arms. The beginnings of the churches used a coat of arms that had the Vatican keys, and they put this hat on top of it. And there's early depictions of what that hat really was, and this was quite a big breakthrough recently. We found an old church that had it made in a mosaic work in the ceiling, where it showed a full UFO with trails of smoke or fire coming beneath it. And that was no hat. That was something in the sky that seemed to be riding a serpent. So we've got the serpent, the cosmic serpent, being involved in a lot of them. And having seen that cosmic serpent little piece of extra information, we started looking where it fitted in other ancient cultures, because the cosmic serpent is also very, very broad-based with these visitors. And it seems to be a wormhole opening where these discs seem to come into our airspace. So the story is getting really sort of into a kind of a, let's call it almost a sci-fi looking story. But what can we say? This seems to have happened in every civilization, and it's recurring in records that come out of these gates that open up in the sky.
Well, I love the fact that you have tied in the star being story into all of this too, because you really can't have a story if you don't get here somehow. I mean, if the planet wasn't occupied by something in the beginning, then we pretty much wouldn't be here. Do you find still, I know you had mentioned this when you were first on, that you were having a problem, getting this kind of information out, that there was a lot of resistance, and you were showing a lot of people, you were stirring the pot, and you were ruffling a lot of feathers, to say the least. And I'm wondering if you're still experiencing that, especially since it seems that your theory has evolved to include the ET phenomena. And I can't imagine that your life would get any easier if that was the case. And, you have all of these different kind of things coming into your work, these different threads, and, you talk about the New World Order and the Occupy Wall Street, those kind of things, the political agendas around the world. Your work has kind of morphed into going into that direction too. Do you find that this has kind of led you into this, or has this been another passion of yours that just kind of crosses over into this, or how has this transpired for you?
Yes, actually, I never thought of it this way, but there's two emotional aspects that have made me an active person in humanitarian means, like they're doing at Wall Street. They're trying to change to a resource-based economy, change the whole system, and literally rewrite capitalism. The first thing, obviously, was my near-death experience. I had this out-of-body experience where I believe I had an encounter with this place of what looks like the nucleus of the universe, a huge big pillar of light. Looks like a tree, a living tree, a cosmic tree. And one of my most emotional things that I came back with was I got to feel what it was like being at this nucleus core, what the 2 billion suffering souls on this earth feel like, and that the creation will not let it continue. So that was one sort of realization. My gosh, that this horrible thing that's going on in this world is actually, turning our future into some sort of cataclysm to end it, like putting a dog down that's suffering. That the creation would allow a cataclysmic event to happen again, just to release those souls that are suffering, and that was my biggest drive from then. But yes, because I had these star maps already published, and had some very interesting secret society people visit me and say to me, "Look, do you realize that this is the foundation of our secret society here in the U.S.?" And as a 32-degree Mason, we have this blazing star in a star map that shows the Pleiades, the 7 stars in reference to it. They're looking eastwards in this old, it's called a tracing board. And the more recent tradition was that it was not really Taurus, but it was made to try and look like Sirius was the important star. And looking at the position of the orientation of the 7 stars as the Pleiades on the eastern horizon, it was the Pleiades, it can only be that. That, this whole layout of Washington, D.C. was a star map. The obelisk is the marking of the Egyptian star of Ra, with a typical Egyptian symbol. The obelisk being the X that marks the spot when you look at it from above. As above, so below. The stars literally being mirrored on these ground monuments. Position of the Pentagon being an important star place, and the layout of the Roseland and Arlington district illuminated at night like this huge big cosmic leg. So it's a star map that's illuminating at night, showing the knowledge of where our ancestors came from. So I've had all these interferences with my book. I don't know if I told you the last time, that there was blockage of my book trading in the United States, and we had a lot of sabotage and that sort of thing. I tell you what, it's developed to a situation now where a distributor literally tried owning the book, literally told Amazon that they are the owner, the keepers of the copyright, and then the guy dies. This is like a Da Vinci Code murder. I don't know how this guy died, but the family just say he died from some sort of situation. Now, my book is stuck in frozen analysis while they're trying to solve the situation, but it's not like they're trying to solve the situation. I've proved that the person has died, that it is my book, and it's still frozen. They will not trade it in the United States unless I come there and literally go and see them. So there's something really, really weird going on there, and I'm being advised just to keep away from it, leave my book in limbo until we have a different situation where we can either ride on this as a news story as well, or it just comes right by itself. So we know that we're dealing with a situation where, if we move too quickly, it might be not in our best interest, and they might even come and sort me out, take care of me, so to speak. So, right now, I'm just letting it ride slowly. I'm waiting for better evidence to appear with the star map so I can launch other versions of it. And it definitely won't be a book publication because I'm completely blocked now with that. So I think the best way ahead is ebooks and things like that.
Yeah, I've told you this before, and I want to reiterate this, Wayne. I think your work stands on its own, and who cares what everybody else is trying to do to you? You need to just do your thing anyway. Because you have the kind of information that you have access to, that you have, come out with is going to affect people's consciousness. And that's really the whole point, don't you think?
Absolutely.
Somebody's going to see your work.
Yeah.
Somebody reads your book, somebody watches your slides, or they get on your website and they find your information, and it transfers through consciousness. You're waking people up. Who cares if the publishers are doing their thing, or the secret society people? Who cares? Let them all go. You need to do this. This is part of what you're supposed to be doing. I don't think you would have been awakened the way that you were awakened through the series of traveling and just downloading this information. And you had a series of really potent spiritual experiences that have kind of awakened you to this, to making these connections. And, I have always told you this, and I will always tell you this. I think that you are gifted in that, and I think that your work speaks for itself, and you need to just forge forward and put it out there so it's a frequency, and people can resonate with it and then spread it. They will recognize the truth. Their intuitive sides will see it, and it will gain access through people that way. Don't you agree?
Yeah, absolutely. There's something that I've realized more and more recently is there's a very good chance, now this is going to sound really crazy, that the whole of humanity, with our media that we watch, is under some sort of hypnotic veil. There's some sort of hypnotic grip on our consciousness where, I don't know if we've been bombarded with things like chemicals, aluminium being added to aviation fuel, making these chemical trails in the air, and the combination of that with fluoride being added in the water makes aluminium fluoride. And they found that they used that in the Nazi war to sedate people and to make them easily, in hypnosis they call it when they sort of give you suggestion, that you're suggested to whatever you face with. TV, media, everything's fine in the world, relax, happy, celebrate the great rich people. We are under some sort of hypnotic control, not knowing who we are, where we come from. And the moment you know who you are spiritually and where you come from, this cosmic tree in the universe, that simple imagery and the piecing of that imagery into your mind as your spiritual origins, and then have this bloodline origin, knowing that your bloodline comes from a star group in the Taurus area, and just those two sort of origin aspects being known about in your memory is something that lives. Everybody seems to be changing from it and become not only activists, become more placid, more happy with their life, more focused, less worried, and it seems to be lifting a veil of some sort of weird hypnotic control that we are sedated with in our normal human lives.
Yeah, so from here, how has this changed your own spiritual outlook on life, and what do you see? Because, one of the things that happened to me in my own process as well, and maybe you're familiar with this, maybe you're not, But it was a series of fortunate events that led to an awakening experience for me. And then as I could see through myself, I could see through the, larger picture. And, I made the connections between what's going on in the world and what's happening as you have. And it's not a very pretty picture. It's almost like realizing that, your sewer's backed up and you haven't realized it all this time, and you have a lot of stuff to wade through. So, I think that's what's happening on a large scale. And I think that people are really starting to realize that, the more they know themselves, the more they're able to see the world around them. And sometimes what they see isn't so pretty. And then they're forced to really have to go through these things and take a look at it and try to figure out, their place in the world. And some people don't want to see it because they say it's negative and it's bad and they don't want to deal with it. But I think what we really have to do is just like when we explore ourselves and we reach a sort of enlightenment, or we're self-initiated into a higher order of things or an understanding, we have a responsibility to help other people wake up also. And I also think this is what your work does. And I'm curious how has this changed? You've gone off into a lot of different tangents of stuff, and I'd like to at some point in the show get on to the Jordanian codices that you have just, kind of decoded. Very fascinated with those things. And I think that this is all ties in. It all seems to make sense. It kind of builds a story. And I think the more attuned and aligned you are with yourself and your own consciousness, and, the more you have untangled and decoded yourself, the more you're able to see into these artifacts or these sites or these star maps, and you're able to see and decode them because you have cleared some kind of programming that disables that site. Have you found that people who look into your work are able to get it, are usually those that have been able to succeed at that challenge?
Yeah, a lot of people have this part in their life where they try and find themselves and go on this journey to try and see what life's all about. There's an old saying that, once you know where you've come from, you know where you're going, and you have this sort of awakening. And this is really what it is, having our origins hidden from us. I think it's the elite of ages past, the kings of the great countries that were at war with each other, that kept the secret for a very simple reason. And it might sound stupid looking at it now. Why would they hide this information from us? Well, think about it. The old ways of kingdoms becoming successful were raping, plundering, and murdering the opposition, their neighboring countries. And you were allowed to go and enslave the people. You were allowed to take their wealth and bring it to the kingdoms, and the kings would take all their gold. And to build these armies, people were led to believe that they were the chosen ones, that the other people out there that were strange traditions, they were heathens and evil. And you had the right to buy and sell their children and have the slavery thing going on. And that has been literally going on till today, that there's this chaos of religions now that have evolved from the original foundation teachings altered and made to look different. For example, the Christians use the sacred cross, okay? The Eastern Islamic traditions use the crescent and the star. And the Hebrew tradition uses the menorah and the Star of David. Now, wouldn't it be weird that all three of these are that star map, and each is holding 1/3 of the star map? Orion is the sacred cross. It's the three belt stars that rise on the east, and the four stars that are around it make a big X through it. And that is the cross of the Christ story, which is one heck of a story that I've made freely available. And by the way, everything that I'm showing here, people don't have to pay for it. This is one thing about, these important lost knowledge pieces of the puzzle. No person can put a price on it. It's fine for me to have a book available for people that can afford books and to have it as a copyright document, so to speak, and more detail that people can even use freely at a library, because the libraries are keeping them in some places now. You can't make these secrets a price. You can't put a price on them. So I warn a lot of people out there that are watching, a lot of these new age gurus that are charging for DVDs and all kinds of, they have the truth and follow my story, but you need to buy all my books and DVDs to get the story. Watch out for those people that don't make some of it free, because the fundamentals of this need to be available for every person on the earth if they need it. They can just go and look at it online. So that's kind of a responsibility aspect that I felt that if I do this, even before I had all the interference, my goal was to have the cheapest possible way of producing the book with color pictures. That's basically, it's just a very small return on it that you're still in debt from it, would you believe? The basis is also on websites that they can just see the basic star maps, and, everybody deserves that information if they want it.
Well, I think that it's our right to be initiated into that kind of information, and I think that that's why our ancestors left it for us in such obvious places, so that we would actually put it together and figure it out, because we're not stupid.
The funny thing
we're not a stupid
about
species.
This whole ancient star map thing is, these pyramids positions as a star representation, the last of the monuments on Mars.
Hi, everybody. Looks like we're having some technical difficulties. We're trying to get Wayne back on the air. Sorry about that. That happens with live radio. We do have some of you sending in some questions through the InQuick program. We have Darren Cleaver, who's writing in from Grafton, Australia. Hi, Darren. I know I've seen you around on Facebook. I know you're a big fan of the show. Thanks for listening. He has a great question, and I'll repeat it for Wayne when we get him back on the line. But Darren has asked me to give a big shout out to his website, and I'd like to do that for him. Darren has a website called valleycounseling.com.au, and he's not on the line to tell me a little bit more about what it is, but Darren is one of my biggest fans, so he says. So thanks, Darren, for listening. Your question is great. It's in relation to out-of-body experiences that Wayne has had, and he has had quite a few. And you can actually go to his website, and you can read his story. You can go to wayneherschel.com and oneism.org and keyofsolomon.net. And I think we have him back on. But he does talk a lot about his out-of-body experience. And Wayne, you're back on? We have you back?
I'm back. Yeah.
Okay, great. Must be those people trying to keep you from talking to me again.
It happens. One of the reasons I don't like advertising too much on the show too long in advance, because it just sets me up for line interference. So we might have it again. I hope we don't.
Well, if we do, we'll get you back on. It's not a big deal. Bill's great at that. So thank you, Bill, for bringing my guest back on. I was telling the listeners before we had you back on that we have Darren Cleaver joining us from Grafton, Australia. He's a big fan of the show, and he has a question for you in relation to your out-of-body experience that you've had. And he asks, well, still alive in this physical earth realm, do you think the average person can access the cosmic tree of life or Akashic records by remote viewing, etc., with the intent to help our planet thrive? What a great question.
That's the whole valuable piece of the spiritual material. This thing called enlightenment, and then the secret society name, they called it illumination. It's the same thing. It's pretty much where the spirit is linked, illuminated through light, finding this light of the creation, God. And yes, definitely, there's a secret right that, of course, secret because I didn't want people to find a way how to become enlightened. And it involves a deep meditational trance, and it's about 5 or 6 really important aspects to it, and I've made it freely available on oneism.org, The Secrets of Meditation. Number 1, getting in a trance-like state. This is this weird thing where hypnosis can take place, where the mind is awake but the body is asleep. And when the mind is awake and the body is asleep, a weird kind of state, which is trance, the strange thing is you can connect asking for it and literally calling on that information, and you'll see visions and information. It comes like a crazy dream at first, and you try and reason with it, but you can interact with it. You can actually have this journey where you can ask it questions, and it'll show you pictures and information, but you'll never, as far as I know, I haven't heard of anybody that has a voice speak to them. I think that's quite a scary thing to get into, because then you'll have some sort of schizophrenia situation where these voices will pretty much haunt you. It's quite good just being happy with images as visions, and that's what guided me along. After I had that near-death experience, I could tap back into it, going into early morning deep meditation. While my body was about to wake up, I had this routine where I could call on this light, and you know what sort of image to target. You think of the imagery that I show on the website and knowing what it looks like, and literally that is the key to calling it. You're calling something that you know is there. And I was asking for information where I could find more evidence of these star maps, and that was the weirdest way I found this thing called the Key of Solomon star map, which is literally a weird-looking cipher that's drawn in a big circular disc with little goodies all drawn inside it, and it's a mishmash of all kinds of symbols. And having seen that in this vision, I knew I had to go look for a Hebrew source of ancient knowledge to look for that disc. And, you know, that's just one example. So people can learn how to do this trance-like state. Another important thing to know is there's a part in the brain that the elite, I think, or even today, one of the reasons they're using fluoride is it's actually damaging the pineal gland. And the pineal gland is a mysterious part of the brain. And that pineal gland is being literally poisoned with fluoride. And if you can get away from drinking tap water and actually watch out for even pans that have these non-stick surfaces, they've also got fluoride additives in for those people that are avoiding the water, but their food is contaminated. You've got to keep away from this fluoride contamination. With, I think the ideal thing, which is to me the original meaning of holy water, is spring water that has come from a granite source rock area. It's quite hard to find, but that I think is the original reference to holy water by drinking this sacred water, like the Egyptians spoke of as well. The mind has an incredible sort of charge. It's almost like fuel for the soul to do these incredible connections with the creation. And even in deep prayer, you're speaking to this cosmic tree, the deeper self, so to speak. Because what it really is, this cosmic tree is the higher self in a very, very amazing way, that we're just a little chip of this light. We're a little piece of this cosmic light, a piece of God, so to speak. And given this sort of feeling of singularity, a feeling of personal own separation from everything else. But every single person is sharing that little false reality of that they have this individualism. And this is another thing that woke me up. Was like, gosh, we're all basically ourselves on this planet. Every single person is that little chip of light that's living in a different time. We're all ourselves living from this creation. You know, the old sort of the Da Vinci Code, not Da Vinci Code, old Dan Brown's theory that you know, we are literally God in that sense. I don't like to look at it like that way, because we're still very humble and need to look up to the creation with great respect. But we're all this little piece of this light that is in us, and we're all basically the same. We're like mirrors of ourselves. The I that is me is the same I that is you. And that's quite an awakening thing. When you walk past somebody in the street that's starving and knowing that is yourself in a different time realm, you know, you think, gosh, we've got to do some things to change our earth, to stop all the suffering, because it's us that are suffering. We're a bigger piece of the creation, and we've got to make an effort to try and do something about it. So all those secrets of this deep meditation are on the oneism.org site. Go and have a look in there and see the importance of sacred areas. Some areas are hotspots for an earth energy that literally charges and links up the soul in a very strong way. Places that are very high in granite, of course. The Egyptians called it spirit stone. It's not silly that they built pyramids and put chambers inside them for this, because that's what they did. That's what those chambers actually did. They were spiritual stargates. They could actually vibrate the soul out of the body because of the strength of that man-made mountain, and project towards stars and literally, you know, travel the cosmos. So these things are all being forgotten, and there's a good chance that if we can just practice this from a child, and this is my theory, if you can keep away from fluoride as a child and go through a process of training, the initiates that are these future generations can probably astral travel, have this out-of-body experience by natural means. And that is a gift that has been stolen from us. And I think the future has a chance of getting that back.
Do you think that the crossover into the UFO subculture, which is sometimes a smooth ride and sometimes not a smooth ride, do you feel that this has been a natural procession for you in moving into the UFO subculture and being able to talk about disclosure and tracing our origins back to ancient aliens, so to speak, or that kind of other life forms from other planets that perhaps seeded this culture and left us the technology and the knowledge of how to build the temples, how to do the ceremonies, but certainly what the indigenous say. I mean, there's no doubt about it that the indigenous have kept the stories alive generation from generation and carried on that tradition. That is just a fact. That is their history. And for the most part, the rest of the planet has been kind of brainwashed into believing that, the history is a certain set of facts and so on, and that's it. And so there's an unraveling that has to take place where we start to discover us and our natural history and where we really come from. Do you feel that the Disclosure Project, things of that sort, people who are working very, hard in that field to bring the truth out to the public, are doing, basically what the ancients prophesized and basically just bringing back old knowledge? This isn't anything new. What do you think?
Yeah, well, look, there's something really amazing with the UFO subject. I've realized, obviously, from the near experience that the means of cosmic travel are with these discs. They literally look like the sun. They shine like the sun, and the ancients got very confused trying to teach us about them. I mean, in Egypt, they have this disc with wings on it. And, of course, historians will tell you, oh, that's the sun. The sun rises on the horizon. I agree, yes, with the historians that over the last the period at the end of the last Egyptian age, they did believe it. They thought it was the sun. So if you go back earlier, they speak of Ra's ship actually being slightly different appearance. It had multiple colored light radiating from it. And there's an Egyptian papyrus that I was very fortunate to find a couple of years ago now. It's still unknown because of all the interference in my work. There's a papyrus that shows the landing of Ra in a UFO, and it landed on the back of the Sphinx. That's why the back of the Sphinx is flat. This is being documented on an Egyptian drawing, and in the tombs, in the three most sort of popular kings' tombs, have got depictions of Ra but they show the traditional boat, the bark. It looks, that weird-shaped boat that he's standing in. They make it a traditional boat, and then, of course, it's going to be a weird religion because, we have a boat from the lake that's sitting on the back of the Sphinx, and it doesn't make any sense. But this is a ship that came from the sky, from the earliest papyrus. It shows that it's having 3 legs and a dome and radiating beautiful colored light. So the UFO side of it, if you look at our history, how every beginning of civilization spoke of these visitors, call them angels even, that came from the sky. They came down in these solid objects. So then where have they been over the last 2,000 years? And I've sort of come to realize that we have some sort of a power, especially in our last few generations, let's say the last 100 years. There seems to be some kind of human control over these UFOs being blocked from coming here. Now, how can us primitive humans have the power to stop visitation or make other star visitors out there abide to some kind of law that we have that they shouldn't appear here? And I want people to consider another weird aspect of our level of technology. Since the Roswell incident, it has come very clear that human nature, for the hunger for greed and power, wanted the technology to turn into weapons or turn it into competing with the aliens and building these UFOs and literally, having an armament where we can shoot at them. Because that's what we do. The world's protocol for UFOs with any air force in any country is to shoot them down. They're intruders, and you have the right to shoot them down. So we sort of this weird kind of trying to be better than them kind of aspect, and we think we can shoot them out of the sky. I think there's a situation where I think it's our elite today, more recently, has developed a situation where they are blocking them from appearing in our airspace by a threat of actually harming us, where our government will harm us and make it look like they are shooting at us. For example, they have probably made it well known in whether it be radio signals or just making the information known out there, because obviously these aliens would be watching us and hearing our communications, that if any UFO appeared in any airspace, they will literally blast it out of the sky or blast something near it and make it look like the UFO is attacking us. Hence the excuse that our armies and wars could, our armaments could shoot at these sort of things. They would actually have forced collateral damage on humanity, and they would kill, they being governments, would turn upon us and use us as collateral damage and make it look like these UFOs are attacking us. And these advanced beings out there probably look at the humanitarian loss and would never want that to happen. And they have that power that they wouldn't want to appear here and cause human harm. So this is one of the reasons I think, and it's the threat of collateral damage, is that they don't appear here, that our greedy, powerful forces controlling this world will shoot at them and make them look like the UFOs are attacking us, and hence an excuse to shoot at them. And they probably have, our military probably have equipment and military developments and lasers and things that they could shoot at them, literally. And it's quite a terrible thing that we're in that situation. So we're not going to see anything, I think, until this world is in a situation where those powers have been neutralized. Then they perhaps appear in our skies without any risk to themselves or risk to the population. Now, I want to mention a very weird situation that happened here in October last year. There was a woman in Australia called Blossom Goodchild that said that there was going to be a UFO appearing somewhere in the southern hemisphere. And she went on Coast to Coast Radio that these people had told her, or through some kind of spiritual link, that they would be appearing at a specific date and they would show themselves to give us hope. Well, the final clues that she was giving out closer to the time was that it'll be over the Great Table and the Alabama. They were giving clues because they wanted to have information that this thing was premeditated. So they were giving these clues. So when it does happen, Blossom Goodchild can take the credit that, you know, this is what she was told and this is who they are. And they are space brothers and they're human beings and they're from the area of the Pleiades. And what went really weird was we have a mountain in Cape Town here called Table Mountain. It's in the southern hemisphere, so there's a Great Table. And the reference to Alabama, the first big ship that ever arrived in one of the harbors in Cape Town was the Alabama, the SS Alabama, which has a traditional song, you know, Dokom the Alabama is an old traditional Afrikaans song here about this arrival of this big ship. So everything started tying up, and I went into a radio station because I wasn't quite sure what Blossom Goodchild, if she was another one of these New Age weirdos, but it started making sense. And the weirdest thing happened on the day when it was supposed to arrive. Would you believe our bay was occupied by one of the biggest American warships that has ever been here in the last 15 years? There's no other presence of an American battleship in our waters for 15 years, and then one chooses to come into our waters on that day. I mean, this just completely floored me. And of course, nothing happened. You know, I wouldn't be surprised if they put the ship had something dropped in the water, because later in the day it went out 100 kilometers, apparently, and moored off in the great distance from Cape Town. It was ready to do something. What would it do if it put some super weapon into the ocean ready to detonate it? If this UFO appeared just to show itself, you know, it would look like it's attacking us. And this is what I mean by the power of the threat of collateral damage. This sounds really bizarre. I still don't want to believe Blossom Goodchild anymore because nothing happened. So I'm really angry with this Galactic Federation group because they have 100 different speakers now that are all saying different things. It's turning into chaos now. So to try and follow this is really difficult for people. I think all we can do really is literally watch what's developing with the Wall Street movement, with the human uprising against the elite. I think it's happening very quickly. And there's a good chance we will neutralize that threat of collateral damage, and these things will safely appear in the sky, knowing that they're not going to be shot at.
What is your opinion on the Occupy Wall Street situation? I have to say that I was down there this past weekend, and one thing that kept coming up to my mind is the bull, the actual bull statue that there is on Wall Street. And if you look at an aerial picture, I've mentioned this a couple times on the show, Dr. Mark Gray is really good at, has done some fabulous work with mapping out some of the symbolism of the site, the 9/11 Memorial, which I had the opportunity to actually physically see this weekend. Now, it does resemble kind of an Orion alignment if you look at it from above, which I think is interesting. Have you come across any kind of connection with the bull and, you know, the whole alignment of these different buildings and stuff going on down there, or have you not had a chance to look into that yet?
I haven't had a chance to go down there, but obviously the bull is the symbol outside of Wall Street, and that could be the ancient Masonic symbolism. That's one aspect of it. The most amazing thing about this organization, and it's annoying me to see people especially on Facebook, say, this is probably an inside job that is elite controlled and set up to drop the economy. But the way it's designed, I mean, look at three very important things of this movement, and people must really take these into account. Number one, it has no head person. It's anonymous. Number two, its fundamentals are all basically written down on a website, and they're all humanitarian fundamental important rules and things that want to change. And the people have now owned it. The public have literally taken ownership of this.
Well, I agree, certainly. Do you have any plans in the future to visit these places in the United States?
I'm not even sure I'll be able to get to the air terminal. The last trip to the U.S., I'll tell you what, they treated me like I was a terrorist. And that
you're kidding.
I'm not joking. After the book was done, I had the first little bit of interference where we found that something went wrong with distribution. I get to we landed in Minneapolis and seeing family there as well. I went through the first part of my looking at my passport. Something came up on the machine with my name. They called me aside, literally interrogated me. Why? You're from South Africa. You've done military service in Southern Africa. What are you doing here? Who are you staying with? And they literally interrogated me for at least about 20 minutes there. I thought I was going to be put on the plane back again. And, we had a lot of things happen while I was in America. I did the Coast to Coast radio show. We had, my website, being shut down. And at the one stage when I was trying to do the radio show, we had, I hate talking about it, but we had almost a situation where people were watching us in these dark vehicles and, like you see in the movies, and you start getting a bit paranoid when this happens. And I canceled the link up with the show because we didn't want to be anywhere near where I was supposed to be for the radio show. I literally went to another hotel, booked in quietly, and then tried to set up another date for the radio show. So, it sounds really weird, but I'm sad to say there's a very powerful force that's in control of this world that doesn't want this information to get out. It's something with a very proud ownership of it. And here's, me, John Bloggs, doing the, making the story freely available as free information. So, it's a movement. I'm glad to say what this Occupy Wall Street is public owned now. You can see people of all walks of life coming here, from children, adults, workers, doctors, lawyers. Every group of civilization is now making a stand. The 99% is us. So even if let's pretend it had a sinister plan to begin with, it's designed to be taken over by the public. How stupid is that? So my honest opinion is it was not evil in any way. It was a group of people that are humanitarian, and they had literally, you have to say, the balls to do it, and they've done it. It's happened and it started. And the situation is at a level now where we the people can actually take a bit of credit now for some success already, because I don't know if you've been watching, they've just caught an inside trader in Wall Street that has gone down. The media now is focused on who are the people messing up the economy. We've changed a bit of this veil of control over, we must honor and worship these people at Wall Street, and they give them clap hands when it opens in the morning, everybody look up to them as great people. They now have this sense of guilt because the way they're making their money in the banks and their bonuses. I don't know if you saw Obama's comment on, the banks have just given themselves a couple of billion bonuses again. And what is your opinion on that? And I think he was sort of stumbling and saying, well, it's. I think he said something about it's not inhumane, it's just inappropriate. But he said it in a way like he felt very guilty. So there is this huge change of, this super rich taking too much of the pie of life, and it's all changing now thanks to this movement, and this is the beginning of it. Can you imagine now, a couple of weeks down the road, what it's going to be like, and how these people, I think that the inside traders are all going to split on each other. If one gets taken down, he's going to take down the others, so you're going to see it going all the way up the ranks to, people that are in very powerful places being called in as they're the ones that are calling the shots for the inside trading and these Ponzi schemes and hedge funds and this the most weirdest names of crooked illegal trading. They're all going down. So this is a wonderful thing, and nobody should worry about it. I think the biggest thing that we must realize is if they were left as they were, they were in the process of crashing the economy, and by that they mean really crashing everything down to, literally chaos. Where I think it's a situation now with the protest, it wouldn't go as low as that. So we have something better than a crash. And even if the economy crash still takes place because they have those powers, we're fighting it and we're trying to change it all. And these people that get caught with all these billions and there's actually trillions that were taken from the Federal Reserve. I mean, how does 9 trillion go missing in the Federal Reserve? I put that video up quite a few times on my Facebook because that is a hearing where they actually, find out that this money's just gone missing. They're going to find out who's taken it. That money's going to have to come back, and it's going to go back into society. It's not going to go back to any bank owners. It's going to go to the people, and to develop free education, develop healthcare, and the most important thing is to get our people that are suffering and struggling back on their feet again. So we have a really important thing to stand up with. So if anybody's out there doubting the 99%, we are the 99%. It's the world population versus the super rich that have power. So don't be afraid.
Wise words, and hopefully everybody out there is listening and you will share them because it's pretty profound what he just said. And Wayne, we're running out of time. We're at the end of the show. So if you'd like to let people know exactly where they can find you, and if you have anything upcoming where you are or out in the world someplace where people can connect with you to your work.
Yeah, Facebook is the ground zero for all this information that's releasing. I've reached that 5,000 limit. It's a normal problem, but I've started a like page, and I'm going to be developing that more. So if people could please just click the like page, and then once I get enough numbers there, I'm going to completely go across it. But for now, while there's a lot of Trojan spies out there that get onto my Facebook and try and bring it down, the normal like, not the like page, but the normal personal page is working safer at the moment. But Facebook is changing very rapidly. And I think the next few changes are probably not in our best interest, but I'm going to be available in these public social networks. So for now, it's still Facebook, so that's the best place to link up with me.
Great. Well, thank you so much for being here, Wayne, and for joining me in the middle of the night in South Africa. And we hope to see you. Hopefully you can get in the United States soon. They won't have you on the terrorist
list. I'll give it a
try. We would love to have you here to share your work. And in the meantime, it'll have to be virtual, and people can find you all over the internet, and they can share it there and keep spreading the light. Thank you, everybody, for being here, for joining me. And until next time, I'm Hillary Raimo. Good night, everyone, and namaste.